While Cyberpunk 2077 hit all the chords of a cyberpunk world, the choruses of neon lights glowing in the dark, the symphony of rain, the familiar tune of cybernetically enhanced gangs, there was one off-note thing in particular about it, visually, that really caught my attention. When I first saw that trailer for it back in 2018, my initial thoughts were, wow, Cyberpunk in the day? That's weird. It's like seeing Batman in the day. It just feels kind of wrong. But that's also what makes it kind of awesome. This isn't the first time such a phenomenon has occurred. Titles such as Ghost in the Shell, Akira, Robocop, and even more recently Dread and Altered Carbon, while primarily featuring action in the dark, all have scenes during the day. And far from merely giving us the famous imagery of those streets lost with rain and pools of water mirroring the lights above, we are unusually faced with a bright blazing sun. To go from rainy nights to sunny days is quite literally a polar opposite. When I think of Ghost in the Shell, the first image that comes into my head is the night. Same with Akira, Blade Runner, and to be honest, Cyberpunk in general. It conjures up a dark image with bright neon beams of light. But when I think of Cyberpunk 2077, I envision the orange hue of the sunlight. I see myself standing on the edge of the city, overlooking it, being overwhelmed by the saturation of gamma rays beating down the night city. The irony isn't lost on me. Don't get me wrong, I love the nighttime in this game, but in terms of pure moments that I've experienced in science fiction, this is as important a marker imprinted on my mind as the first time I saw Deckard looking down on that incredible city below him in Blade Runner. More commonly in the cyberpunk genre, the sun is but a remnant of the past, a relic of the old world that has been long forgotten, a billion-year-old god banished by humanity. In William Gibson's Neuromancer, natural light is a foreign concept, instead replaced by neon and a halogen haze night sky. As it is in Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, in cyberpunk worlds, it commonly seems to be the case that the sun is either completely drowned out by pollution or invisible from under the billions of tons of man-made structures. It turns out, when this original trailer came out, there were people out there who were actually pissed about it being depicted during the day. We can see the digital trail of their repulse at the idea of there being the presence of sun in this world. The original creator for Cyberpunk 2020, Mike Pondsmith, actually responded saying, "Anyone can make it dark and rainy and neon-y. We already knew we could do that. We wanted to prove that it can be the dark future any time of day or night." And this does ring true in Cyberpunk 2077, where the weather actually helps denote tone and key parts of the story. Deaths are punctuated under showering skies. You find serenity in the eye of the storm, and experience a moment of illumination in leaving the world that you've known one last time as it glows like a supernova. The sun is shown to represent a new day, or the last days of a life you've known, in contrast to the rain. It's clear that this association with cyberpunk and rainy nights is one that many people have, and is seemingly part of an increasingly glamorized cyberpunk core vibe based purely on aesthetics. There is an ironic determinism in the idea that humans would welcome a cyberpunk future so readily. Danny Boyle's Sunshine from 2007 features a crew of scientists sent on a mission to reignite a dying sun. Aside from the mission itself, the ship's psychologist has a morbid fascination with our star. We meet him as he's sitting in an observation lounge, staring in awe, asking the computer how far down he can turn the safety filter in the viewfinder. He settles on a percentage that he can withstand for 30 seconds, before causing him permanent damage. Intoxicated by the sun, he can't get enough. The sun in their world is dying, but it still remains majestic. It's still inextricably linked to the human spirit and history. It's something we're very familiar with while being altogether alien. It's what provides us with life, but can also kill us in an instant. It is both potential luxury and destruction. And in those two terms, maybe it can be applied to the cyberpunk genre too. In a blog post predating the release of Cyberpunk 2077, Pondsmith outlined what he saw as a quote-unquote proper cyberpunk-themed game. Most people think Cyberpunk is just a summary of specific tropes: big guns, dark streets, and dangerous guys in ubiquitous leather dusters. But the core of Cyberpunk is a lot more subtle than that. Cyberpunk is about the seductive qualities of corruption and decay. It doesn't have to be dirty or grimy on the physical level, but on the psychosocial level, even the cleanest, most orderly corpse zone should be rife with darkness and collapse. This specific love that people have for everything Cyberpunk apparently isn't a bug, it's a feature. Part of the genre of Cyberpunk is that people love it, despite its dystopian outlook, which teases its eventual inevitability. I think my love of the sun in this game mirrors that love of the Cyberpunk genre. It's something we can't help but be hypnotized by, like a moth to a flame. But Mike Pondsmith was also salient of this very thing, stating that the world of Cyberpunk wasn't aspirational, but a warning. A warning about the real future. What I said earlier, about how absent the sun was in other incarnations of the genre, the reality is, the sun isn't an ancient god we separate ourselves from. Rather, it's still here, and it's not going anywhere for a long time. If anyone is going to suffer the consequences, it's going to be us. The sun will wreak havoc on humans long before the reverse, and in true cyberpunk fashion, in our real world, it's predicted to end up disproportionately affecting the poorest the most. In the coming years, the increase in global temperature is projected to wreak havoc on poorer nations in a significantly greater way. One of the first books I remember reading as a kid was called How Maui Slowed the Sun, a book by New Zealand author Peter Grossage based on a traditional Polynesian folktale. The book tells the story of Tamanoitera, the sun god, and how he would move quickly across the sky, making days short, not allowing people to complete their tasks. So Maui and his brothers hatched a plan. They head over to where the sun sleeps, tie him down with magic rope, then proceed to beat the crap out of him. They literally beat up the sun. Afterwards, they end up releasing him from the ropes, and now, permanently weak and slowed, Tamanoitera moves slowly across the sky. The rays of sun that we see, being the remaining ropes, still attached to him. It's a beautiful tale for a children's book. I have remembered it for all of these years, but it also demonstrates one thing. In this legend, potentially thousands of years old, it depicts humans battling nature, wrestling with the sun, in an effort to control the effects it has on us. This has been something that people have evidently thought about for a long time, and not just from a nature perspective, but the idea of becoming strong enough to battle gods, to change and shape them to your will, or even replace them. It's in keeping with what we're talking about. In one of the endings of the game called The Sun, we see V travelling up to space to do one more big mission. A mission we never get to see. Another ending, The Star, which incidentally can also be a sun, we see V looking over Night City, bathed in golden rays, before leaving to start a new life. These are also both alluded to in the tarot cards in the game. The Sun card symbolizes success. It's a card of freedom, renewal, and a bright future that lies ahead. The Sun also represents truth, for its light will always pull back the curtain of shadow that hides the world's secrets. While the Star card is the card of hope. In the darkest of nights, there is a light that shines the path to home. The star is inspiration, motivation, and gives us the strength to move forward. When I'm walking around in the real world and there's heavy fog, or an overcast day with fine mist falling, I think of Blade Runner, and it brings me a kind of peace. And now, increasingly, when I have to squint my eyes at a flare of blinding sunlight, I've come to think of Cyberpunk 2077. I've already made a video about my failure to truly leave the game behind me, and hey, here I am making another video about it. I also made another video about the background environments in games, and I suppose this is kind of the offspring of the two. But the sun in this game just hits different. We can see light rays shooting through occasional pinpricks in the overcrowded skyline, the contours of gigantic buildings, Vast land masses lit up as far as the eye can see, the blue atmospheric haze obscuring distant places and complementing the tangerine glare above. It's in humans' nature to be drawn to the sun, and it's not lost on me that I'm talking about such a thing in a video game, an artificial light source in an artificial world. Ironically, the real sun reminded me of the sun in a video game. Actually sounds like one of the most cyberpunk things ever. It continues to be a paradox that so many people love this genre and find such comfort in it, given that everything we know about it tells us what a terrible existence the people in this world live. Things gleam to be dystopian or horrors of the time, become romanticized and even sought after. When people are confronted with this, they respond positively. Maybe that is the biggest argument for the inevitability of cyberpunk. Sometimes when I look at emerging technology, I wonder if we're coming to the natural conclusion of human advancement, foreseen decades before, or if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we're replicating the very things that inspired us. Is it possible that authors, scholars, and futurists were able to map out the path of humankind purely through speculation? I don't think so. Not entirely, anyway. We don't exist in a vacuum. The advancement of humanity will always be influenced by those who came before. We will always be destined to grow towards the sun. Did you know that I have a YouTube channel? Well, I'm presuming so. I have one right here with several YouTube videos on it, including the ones I mentioned in this video, which you can literally go and watch right now. Look here, I'll even do it for you. Seriously, please watch that.